The last part of the Phaedo, um, where basically Socrates is responding to two objections. The one I've emphasized, the simius soul as liar argument, but also the Siebes argument that even though the soul may be more durable than the body, that doesn't mean that it doesn't eventually wear out. Um, which I'm not emphasizing because I just don't find it, maybe I don't understand it fully, but I don't find it the stronger argument or the stronger objection to the idea of immortality. But he's responding to both of those in the latter part. And it's a very challenging section of the dialogue. I find it very challenging indeed. One thing that you shouldn't miss is Socrates' autobiographical account of his own intellectual development, where he basically explains how he came to rely on the theory of the forms. The idea that what we're looking for are these essences or ideas. If we ask, why is a particular person just, it's because of the presence of justice in that person. And then we're trying to find out what justice is. If we are trying to find out why something is red, it's because of the presence of redness in that thing, et cetera, et cetera. And defending that way of going about things. And I know I'm oversimplifying it, but that's what I take him to be doing. This sets up maybe his last argument for the immortality of the soul, in which he compares the soul to a number. I mean, I think, say that why is the number 3 odd? Why is it an odd number? Because of the presence of oddness. That is, you can't have the number 3 without also having oddness. That is, you'll never have a 3 that's not odd, because its essence is to be odd, or part of its essence is to be odd. I take his last argument for the immortality of the soul to be something that uses that as a basis, or analogizes from that, but it's about the soul rather than the number 3. Just as the number 3, part of its essence, or maybe its central essence, is to be odd. The essence of soul is life. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but if we look at page 60, Socrates is questioning one of his friends, and he says right here, then he went on, tell me, what is that which must be in a body to make it alive? A soul, he replied. And is this always so? Of course, he said. Then the soul always brings life to whatever contains her. No doubt, he answered. And is there an opposite to life or not? Yes. What is it? Death. And we have already agreed that the soul cannot ever receive the opposite of what she brings. Yes, certainly we have, said Siebes. Well, what name do we give to that which does not admit the idea of the even, the uneven, or the odd, he replied. And what do we call that which does not admit justice or music, the unjust and the unmusical? Good. And what do we call that which does not admit death, the immortal, he said. And the soul does not admit death. No. Then the soul is immortal. It is. Well, I mean, again, I'm giving the argument short shrift because we've already done many videos on this, and I know it's quite a bit to try to comprehend in a short amount of time reading this dialogue. The truth of the matter is that a Platonic dialogue was not meant to be read once and then sort of you move on. Platonic dialogue is so rich and so thick with philosophical ideas that it's something you're meant to return to. And so a first reading of it, I'm not expecting you to get a complete understanding of Plato's Phaedo, but I do think that here at the end, he gives us maybe his last shot at the idea of why the soul can't be thought of as dying. And again, I might have mentioned it in an earlier video. What helps me, generally speaking, in trying to understand Plato's doctrine of the immortality of the soul is looking at another great work of the ancient world, the Bhagavad Gita from the Hindu tradition. And although it's different in form, it doesn't have the kind of dialectical structure, conversational structure of the Phaedo. What Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is that when he's worried about the guilt, when he's hesitating to kill fellow soldiers in war, he has to remember that they're not really dying. And they're not really dying because what they really are is a self or a soul. And if they are what they really are is a self or a soul as opposed to a perishable body, then what they really are cannot be killed, because the soul is not that kind of thing. When we think of death, what death actually applies to, Plato, I think, is saying, it applies to the body, because certainly whatever the body is, whatever a living body is, it does not continue forever. And what we're left with after the death of that body is certainly something different. But that applies to the body. That if we do believe in something like the soul, then we do believe that part of the essence of soul is that it is alive, and that it cannot admit its opposite. That basically the soul cannot die any more than the number 3 can become even, because that would be an absurdity. So I think what we're left with is the idea that the soul is just the kind of thing whose essence it is to be alive, and that the death of the body really means the departure of the soul, but it doesn't mean the dissolution of the soul, at least in the Platonic way of thinking.